Good morning, everyone. Guys, lots of things been happening. We have got the rhetoric has started now with Trump for a war with Iran. We've got the NATO Secretary General now. I'm going to play you his video. We're going to stop that and I'm going to talk about what he's been saying in regards to, we're going to be having a war with Russia. We have got more on the UAPs, the drones, and we're going to be talking about all sorts of stuff. So, guys, listen, I want to just quickly reiterate some of the things I've previously said, and you can check my videos going back, certainly with this platform and the other one, over a year. The United States is going to break away from NATO. They're going to leave and again, so NATO's already over. It's obsolete. It's not worth the paper it's written on. But when I say NATO, I'm kind of meaning the countries now that are involved. Namely, if you live in the United Kingdom, if you live in Europe, you're going to have it's going to be a coalition. It's going to be something else. They may even still pretend that they're NATO, but it's going to be the United Kingdom, France, Poland, basically Europe. And they're going to be fighting the Russians. And then the United States is going to go and have a war in the Middle East, a war with Iran. And I think this is going to, I think you're going to have the first amphibious landing craft hitting Iran March 2026. That's realistically the earliest that this can happen. And I'm going to give you guys the footsteps towards that. But before we go into that, guys, before we talk about that, before we talk about this NATO war warning that the General Secretary has given, if you've not done so already, guys, can you please hit the buttons below and like and share and subscribe? Really appreciate it when you guys do that. It's just a little click for your fingers. First of all, we're going to go onto the war map because I've seen something that it's certainly not being reported on. It's certainly not being reported on the media. But let me know what you guys think anyway. So, first of all, remember how I talk about this pincer movement? The pincer where the Russians will come either from the north or the south, and then north and south together, and then they will isolate a town, they will close it off, and then they will, they just surround that town and engulf it, and then it's overrun. Let me show you something. Tell me what you think. So, right, so this is from the 12th of November, so I'm just going to fast forward a month. Obviously, you've got key locations here of Pokrovs and Velika Novosilka. So let me just fast forward and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Obviously, watch the amount of ground the Russians are taking and the Ukrainians are taking none back. Right, so that's where we are as of today. Now, let me just go back really quickly. I don't know if you've seen it yet or not. See, I think there's a bigger battle here, and I think there's some, I've gone too far. Right, doesn't matter. Right, so I think there's some sort of secret base here. And again, I don't know if there is or not. But look at this town here. I'm going to try and do a little bit of a deep dive into this, and if I can find anything, I can't now. But if I can find anything, I'll let you guys know. So this town here, Hanivika. So let's just obviously, it looks like already they're coming round and they've done this pincer movement already. But just keep your eyes on that town, guys. I'm going to fast forward this now real quick. Can you see? So my question is, what on earth is in Hanivka? What on earth is in Hanivka? I've no idea. It's certainly not being reported on the media, but it looks to me from this map that there's heavy resistance coming from Hanivka. Now, if we look at this in a bigger picture, and guys, listen, this is just total wild speculation from me. I've got no inside information on this, and if I did have inside information on it and they told me not to say it, I wouldn't say it. But, I certainly don't have any inside information on it. If you look at the ground, it actually looks like the real play here is that town there, Hanivka. So what is in Hanivka? Because it looks like they've held here. They're not pushing any further forwards. It looks like they've held here outside Pokrovs, but it looks like they're trying to take this town, Hanivka. And if there was no resistance there in that town of Hanivka, they would have just steamrolled all the way up through this, and this would be closed off now. So what is in Hanivka? What is, again, there may be nothing in Hanivka, but they're doing they're literally doing a pincer movement. So my question is, what's there and what are we not being told? What I'm thinking now is, as soon as this town falls, and it's looking like, I mean, how far is this gap here? What is it, a couple 100 meters or something ridiculous? I mean, you can argue that this is already closed up. So let's just go from there to there. 2 kilometers. So is that over the road as well? It should be. Yeah. So okay. So they've got 2 kilometers here. You see what they do is, and again, it's a perfect movement. It's a perfect tactic. So they've held at that road. So what I think they're doing is they're giving these guys, the ability to evacuate their guys through this. Whoever's in here, I don't know if anyone's in here. I may be making this up. This may be just all wild speculation. But I'm looking at the movements on the ground. I'm not listening to what people are telling us. I'm going from this map. It's open source intelligence. It's the map that I'm told everybody goes from. But look here, guys, they've not taken this town of Hanivka. So what's in there? They're leaving the road open, which says to me that they want the people to evacuate rather than, have a fight to the last man. Because as soon as they close this up, they know that these guys are going to fight to the last man. And then that is time consuming. It's difficult. You have a caged animal and you can never be 100% sure that you've cleared all these troops. So what are the Ukrainians holding on to in Hanivka? I am going to do a deep dive. I am going to try and do a deep dive into this. I'm going to ask around. I'm going to try and find out what's in this location. But it looks to me like they're leaving the road open and saying, hey, guys, listen, you know what? You need to evacuate as quickly as possible. Equally, it's only a small location. The Russians have more than enough capacity just to level that whole place. So what is in there? One, that the Ukrainians are trying to hold on to. And two, that the Russians don't want, is so important that the Russians don't want to level. I don't know the answers. I'm going to try and find out. But, that's just what I'm thinking at the moment, guys. So anyway, that is the situation in Ukraine. And again, what I keep saying, all the information's out there. Everything's in the open. Nothing's hidden anymore. That's open source analysis of the situation in the ground. I do think there's something suspicious in that region. Tell me what you think, guys. Is there something suspicious? Or is it just, could it just be the Russians decided to do a random pincer movement on a random town because, I don't know, reasons? So anyway, guys, let's get straight into it. The NATO war warning. I'm going to share another little video with you guys now, and we'll stop that and we'll just talk about what this actually means. So let's make this big.
The other way.
Hang on.
We must face it.
Stop.
We are not ready for what is coming our way in 4 to 5 years.
Right. So, guys, listen, let's just conceptualize what he's just said. So this is not some, this is not some half-baked politician who's reading off a script, although he will be reading off a script. This is the Secretary General of NATO. He is in charge of NATO. Remember, NATO's over. It's obsolete. It's not worth the paper it's written on. But as an organization, but what he's saying is still true. The countries, the alliances, the people, the people who are going to be involved in this conflict, I don't think they're going to have a NATO t-shirt on because the United States will have focused all their efforts in the Middle East. So we still need to understand what he's saying and take it with a high degree of credibility. He's saying there, we are not ready for what we're going to face in 4 to 5 years. I think that's giving it a little bit too long. I think it's going to be a lot closer to 1 or 2 years.
Danger is moving towards us at full speed.
Again, guys, sorry to keep stopping this every couple of seconds, but from the map, danger is literally moving towards us in Europe every day. Now, the Polish, they are right on the vanguard of this. If and when Ukraine falls, and from what we've just seen by the town of Hanivka, I think there's something in that town of Hanivka. So I think once that's fallen, there'll be a further push on Pokrovsk and Novovasilka.
We must not look the other way. We must face it. What is happening in Ukraine could happen here too. And regardless of the outcome of this war, we will not be safe in the future unless we are prepared to deal with danger.
So he's talking there that, you know, since the end of the Cold War, we've been living on a peace dividend. You know, we've understood that, you know, that there's no threats. The threats of war, or a large European war, is relatively gone over. But now the threat of war is real. The Russian war economy, and that's what we've got to think about, the Russian war economy now. So the Russians have been, you know, they've changed their economy from, you could argue what it was before, but the Russians now are producing stuff for the war. So people are making money from the, you know, from small garages who are making little components out of scaffolding bars to the larger, big corporations who are making the bigger long-range systems. There's a lot of people making money now, and people are profiting. So as this war keeps pushing forwards and keeps grinding on, those people are going to be putting pressure to keep the war on, to keep pushing, to keep driving, and to keep taking more ground. The potential for peace talks right now are more or less zero.
We can do that. We can prevent the next big war on NATO territory and preserve our way of life.
You know, it's really interesting there that he's saying preserve our way of life, because if you're in the United Kingdom right now, it really feels like our, and by our, I mean, you know, British culture really has been eroded. And, you know, by our, I mean, you can trace my, you can certainly trace my name back to the 11th century, you know, but in the United Kingdom, but, you know, British culture really is being eroded, and it seems like it's been eroded from the top down.
This requires us all to be faster and fiercer. It is time to shift to a wartime mindset.
So we need to be faster. We need to be fiercer. How many times have I said, you know, done videos and said politicians are reactive. Politicians don't make decisions. They wait for something to happen, then they get told what to say about the event that's happened. You know, so we need to be more proactive. We need to start doing stuff, and the first step to doing stuff is accepting the inevitable, what's coming towards us,
and turbocharge our defense production and defense spending.
So, in fact, I'll finish the video and I'll talk about that. No, the video's finished. Right, so what he's saying there is we need to turbocharge our defense production and our defense spending. Now, these things kind of are synonymous, but they're kind of not as well. So defense spending isn't always in line with defense production. So what do I mean by that? The Russians are producing, you know, in 3 months what the whole of the European Union produces in a year. So we're on a back foot. Now, throwing money at this, I don't feel it's going to have that much of an effect. And again, moving forwards, money right now is, once this hot war started, money is going to become absolutely irrelevant. They will just print more money. That's why we're coming to a new financial system where we're at late stage capitalism, we're at late stage democracy. Well, there's so many markers that are pointing towards a global conflict. You know, I could literally talk for hours about how we're in late stage capitalism, late stage economics, late stage democracy. You know, but all the systems we rely on, they're all rotten, they're broken. We all know they don't work, and everybody knows this. So the system has to be broken down. And what better way to break that system down than a good old-fashioned world war? So defense spending doesn't always align with defense production because, you know, in the United Kingdom, 1,000,000% in the United Kingdom. And in Europe, we've had so much red tape and regulation wrapped around ourselves by ourselves. You know, it's very difficult now for a smaller company to get into this, you know, defense market. Now, this has been kept this way by the law, you know, by the big primes, because they obviously want to keep all the money for themselves. But the problem with that is they can't produce enough stuff because they employ, like, they will employ, if you need some welding done, if like a defense contractor needs some welding done. Now, I'm making this up. This is not a real life example, but there will be lots of examples like this. In fact, let me think of a real example. So if they want some solar, this is a real example. So if the MOD wants some solar panels developing, they will go to the best solar panel professor who studied solar technology all his or her life. It's actually a he, I know him. You know, they will go to him, they'll say, right, okay, sir, I'm not going to mention his name, you know, we need some new solar panels for military vehicles. We need this, 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 and this. Now, because this guy's a professor, he spent his whole life in academia, right? And they'll tell you this. These professors will tell you this. You know, they're quite open about it. They'll say, yeah, listen, you know, I'm really good at science, but I'm useless at producing stuff. I have no idea how to produce stuff. But the military don't really care about that. Sorry, so the military will go to a prime contractor, the BAE Systems or Boeing or whoever, and then they will, you know, Boeing or whoever will go to the best professors, you know, the best guys with all the degrees and all the education. And they will ask them what the cost is. You know, they will give them a blank check and they will say, right, okay, given the best materials, everything best case scenarios. And those professors, because they've always worked in universities, in educational systems, they've never actually produced anything. And again, guys, this is not a diss to professors or anyone. You need to know, they know how this works themselves. They'll be the first, you know, they'll literally be the first to say, yeah, you know what, Sean, I've no idea about industry, mate. I know science, and that's true. So they go to the best people. They pay them $100 grand a year. You know, they may need some, you know, a technician. They'll pay them like 60, 70 grand a year because the technician's got all the degrees. They've got all the education. The reality is they're not getting a better product than, you know, Mike down the road, who, you know, he also knows how to put these solar panels together. You know, John up the street, he can also do this. He does this in his backyard and he'll charge like, I don't know, he'll charge 50 quid a day, and he'd love to be involved. He'd love to help the country. But this is kind of the problem. These big prime companies, and again, this is why when people were talking about BAE System had some faulty equipment, and that's why their nuclear submarine facility burnt down. I was like, not a chance did BAE Systems buy some, you know, some faulty equipment that burnt down because it wasn't up to regulation. Not a chance. It just does not happen. Anyway. So they will use the most expensive engineers, the most expensive technicians. They will use the most expensive parts and components. They will build the MOD, and then they will put 10, 12% profit on top of that. That's just how it works. There's no incentive for innovation. There's no incentive for that company to provide the same product at a lower cost, because they're going to get their money anyway, and they will get their money plus 10%, 10, 12% on top of that. So that's how it works. So where's the incentive there to innovate, use new materials, speed up your manufacturing process? There's no incentive. There really isn't any incentive at the moment. So this is the red tape that we need to get rid of with the military industrial complex. And again, you know, I don't really think there is a military industrial complex, but it's what people say. It's the phrase people use. But, you know, moving down that avenue, that's what we need to do, because guess what? The Russians, they are mass producing stuff on a biblical scale. You know, they're mass producing cheap, reliable ordnance that is used, because all these wars, all these conflicts, when all the smart bombs are done, when all the computers have failed because we can't get microchips and we can't get microprocessors, when all that stuff has happened, guess what, sweet cheeks? It boils down to the basics. 5.56, 7.62, 50 cal, and 81 millimeter mortars. That's what it will boil down to ultimately. When all these fancy bits of equipment have failed, yes, of course, you've got artillery, you've got other systems that, you know, dumb systems that you literally point and shoot. These are, you know, World War II technology. It's tried, it's tested, it's usable. That's what the Russians are mass producing, and unfortunately, we are not producing it anywhere near the scale or quantity that we need to, because we don't have that scale. We don't have that scalability because of the red tape. But anyway, guys, that's just my little rant about the military-industrial, what's happening with the military and what's happening in that sphere. So Ukraine war briefing. NATO warns that Putin wants to wipe Ukraine off the map. So this is further about the NATO Secretary General's speech. He's saying that Putin wants to wipe Ukraine off the map. I don't think that's true. What I think Putin wants to do is he wants to take control of Ukraine. I don't think he wants to wipe it off the map in the context that, reduce it to rubble. I think he certainly wants to take Kiev intact because there's a lot of Russian history in Kiev. For those of you who don't know, Kiev is the birthplace of Russia. So I do think there is a lot of truth in what they're saying there. They want to take control of the whole of Ukraine. And I've said this for the longest time, there can't be there's not going to be even a mutter of peace negotiations or a ceasefire until Russia is up to the River Dnipro. Then and only then can people even think about negotiating. Anything else until that's happened, guys, is absolute cobble's water. There was a joint statement press release. I think this was yesterday. Yeah, yesterday. Joint statement from foreign ministers of Germany, France, Italy, Poland, Spain, and the United Kingdom. So this, I will put the link to the description in this in the video, guys. The link to this article in the description. This is from the UK's UK.gov website. Now it talks about after 1,000 days of Russia's illegal war. I don't know what wars are legal. All wars are going to be illegal for someone. Against Ukraine, we remain steadfast in our solidarity. We will continue to support Ukraine in its right to self-defense against Russian aggression. Listen, there's no chance of a ceasefire, no matter what people are talking about, what people are talking about on the news. There may be some sleight of hand where, peacekeepers go in or whatever, but, this fighting is not going to stop until there's a clear military victorious, somebody comes out on top militarily. I just don't see it. I don't see it on the cards. I don't see any real rhetoric of this. I certainly don't see this, any rhetoric of this in the, with the movements on the ground, especially in the east of Ukraine, now we've just seen. So it just doesn't to me seem like there's any chance of this peace deal that people are talking about. We're going to switch now over to what's happening in Syria. We're hearing from mainstream media that the Russians are now in direct contact with the rebels that have taken over these, that have taken over Syria, because the Russians want to keep the military bases in Syria. Now, I've said it literally from day one. It's the only base that the Russians really need to keep hold of is the naval base on the Mediterranean. The rest of the bases that are in Syria, I actually think that's kind of a blessing in disguise for the Russians, because the Russians don't have to have the military that they had there, the aircraft that they had there. They can then now fly them back to Russia and they can be used against the Ukrainians, which is the main intent. I think this is a blessing for Russia rather than a headache. The only real thing in that region that the Russians need to keep hold of is the naval base. Now, remember when I said, right, which way do I go on this, guys? Do I go straight to Trump or do I do Trump last? Right, let me think. Right, okay, I'll do Trump last. So there's a singer. In fact, let me share this. I'm just going to share the headline. There's a singer here called. In fact, let's remember the lady who was wearing the who got told to wear a hijab, and then she took the hijab off and she started to walk around in her underwear around about the campus of the university, I think a couple of last month or something. And it was all over the media. It was like a non-article in the media. Also, I brought to the forefront of you guys' attention the political group in the United States called Iranians for Trump, and these are kind of the anyway. So Iranian singer Parastu Ahmadi, okay, I may be butchering that name, Parastu Ahmada, facing action after live streaming a concert without hijab. So, I mean, I didn't realize this, but women are not allowed to perform women are not allowed to sing in public in Iran. I didn't even know how that was, I didn't even know how that was a thing. I'm not going to play the video, but the article's there, guys. It's coming out, but this is more of this sort of stuff to appease the left so liberals can, be more up for this war in Iran. So the liberals are thinking, oh, a woman against her human rights. She's not allowed to sing. Women are not allowed to sing. They're not allowed to sing in Iran. That's this, so it's more of this rhetoric towards the Iranians. So this is kind of why we're getting this, this push now, this movement, this rhetoric, all towards, this conflict with Donald Trump and the Iranians in the Middle East. So let me just come on to this now, guys. I'll share this real quick. I'm conscious that this video is waffling on. It's not waffle. It's fantastic news, guys. It's fantastic news that you guys are not going to get anywhere else, because nobody is joining these dots like me. Look at the things I said 6 months ago that are actually happening now. So when I'm telling you things that are happening, that are going to happen in the future, look back through my past history. All my videos are out there on public, on public record. I say things are going to happen, and in a couple of months they happen, because I see the breadcrumbs. I understand how this system works. Right, let me get onto this. Where are we? Trump says of possible war with Iran. Anything can happen. Vows to leverage US support for Ukraine for peace. So this is the thing here, guys. Possibility of war with Iran. Remember, he's not going to come out and say it. Of course he's not. Right now, before Trump's, and I'll put this link in the description. Excuse me. But right now, Donald Trump is not going to come out and say, you know what? I don't like those Iranians. We're going to have a war with them. We're going to have a real good war with the Iranians. I'm going to do it. And people are saying that I'm the best at war. Well, we're about to see where there's going to be a lot of shooting. He's not going to come out and say that. What he's saying now is there's a possibility of war. So what you're going to see in the next few months, in the next few weeks, certainly after Donald Trump's been inaugurated, you're going to see that anti-Iran rhetoric build up. You're going to see more of these articles about how women are being treated in Iran, how, groups are being subjugated. What's the word I'm looking for? I think it was subjugated in Iran. You're then going to see images in Iran of at some point next year, you will see people in Iran waving US flags, and then you'll see the police come down heavy on them. It's all drama. It's all pomp and pageantry. It's to get public opinion. How do I know this? Well, there will be people, again, this asymmetric warfare, grey warfare, non-conventional warfare, it doesn't just work one way. Of course, the West, do these types of projects, missions, to our adversaries. So what they will do, they will find people in Iran and they will say, listen, do you know what? If you guys can have a protest and publicize it and get some footage of you guys protesting by a prominent monument in Iran, waving United States flags, stars and stripes, I will give you a ton of money. And they'll say, what do you mean a ton of money? And they'll say they'll give them this money, because remember, money's not relevant anymore. And they'll say, $1 million, you say? And we'll fund your campaign or whatever, and give you lots of money. I mean, how do we think Just Stop Oil and Antifa and these counter protests, how do we think these have all got so much money all of a sudden? They just managed to get, and that's how you can tell, guys, if a protest is grassroots and real, the signs that they're waving, they will be handwritten. They will all be different. They'll all be in a different font. They'll all be in a different format. But the ones that have got international funding that are against said country, they will all be printed somewhere. They'll be mass printed, and then they just give those placards to people, because those people who are carrying those placards don't really have an affinity with what they're saying. They're useful idiots. They're paid stooges. They just have these flags saying whatever slogan it is on it, and it's printed. They're mass produced, and that's literally, if you want to see whether it's foreign influence or not, go and look at the placards. If they're, if these placards are on a piece of cardboard written with a marker pen, that is grassroots. If it's printed and it's glossy and it's flashy and they've got branding, it's international, you know, it's international funding that's doing that. Anyway, so that's what you're going to see in Iran in the coming months. Certainly next year, you'll see those images. You'll see the police come down heavy on those people. Donald Trump will be angry. More rhetoric will build up. The Israelis will be having a war on all sides, and that's how that situation is going to build up. Whereas the situation in Ukraine, guys, it's just going to keep going the way it is. I want to leave this with you, though, guys. I want to leave this with you. This town, if anybody has any knowledge about this town of, let me share this, actually. This town here that I found, I'm going to do a little, I'm going to ask my friend if he knows, well, a couple of my friends, actually. I don't think they will because they're, you know, they're NGOs, they're real. They work for NGOs, and for them to get like anybody military, it'd be difficult. But this town here, Hanivka, I'm really suspicious. In fact, it may even be this one. No, it's not. It's definitely not. What is in this town here of Hanivka? I'm going to go on the maps. I'm going to have a little search. I'm going to try and find out what I can about that town. But I think as soon as this has fallen, I think this town here, you know, is the reason why they've stopped here in Pokrovs. In fact, is there anything there? No, that doesn't look like there's anything there. That's just the marshland. So the town of Hanivka, I think that's the reason why they've slowed the assault on Pokrovs. So let me know what you think, guys. Is there something in Hanivka? Is there not? Anyway, guys, I hope that was a good update for you guys. You know, any talk of peace at the moment, you know, it just really isn't there. Don't look what people are saying. Sorry, do look what people are saying, but also look at the situation on the ground. Putin's not going to stop because he's pushing forward. He's taking ground every day. The situation in the Middle East, it's just going from bad to worse, you know, and this is just not going to happen. Remember, you know, the NATO Secretary General, we are not prepared and we are heading for war. Anyway, guys, I'm going to Max Grid. I'll get you guys another video later.